Well, hello, Faith Family, and thanks for joining me again for the Daily Connection. We're finishing up our look at John 18 today with a response that Jesus gives to Pilate whenever he asks him, says, are you a king? And of course, we've looked at the fact that Jesus responds back and says, my kingdom is not of this world. And he says, if it was, then my people would fight to me. And it's almost like that was the open door that Pilate was looking for, because as I said Wednesday, he's totally confused right now. He's frustrated because he's tired of fooling with the Jews. He's had interaction with them. They didn't trust him. He didn't trust them. And frankly, he'd seen nothing in Jesus to this point that would warrant such intense hatred and animosity that he sensed between them. And so when Jesus opened up in verse 36 that, hey, my kingdom is not of this world, Pilate's like, oh, bingo, there it is. So verse 37, we pick up, you are a king then, Pilate asked. You say that I'm a king, Jesus replied. I was born for this, and I have come into the world for this, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. So Jesus responds to his question with an affirmative. You say that I'm a king? Yeah, okay, yeah, I'm not denying that. But you need to understand my purpose as a king is not to fight for geographical regions, is not to fight for political power. Instead, my purpose as a king is to come in a mode of revelation. He said, I was born for this, to testify to truth. That's so important because the Jewish leaders especially and the Jewish people, they had truth. They had the Old Testament. They had the law. They had everything they needed that should have helped them understand who God is, what God was doing. It should have helped them identify who Jesus was, both in his location, which it did, if you remember, when Herod was seeking Jesus, the religious people came, or the leaders came and said, is it not in Bethlehem? Is that not what was stated? So they knew where it would take place. So everything they needed was there. And yet Jesus came to testify of who God was in such a real and undeniable way that when he was done, the people couldn't help but fall under judgment because Jesus made it so clear and plain. And he goes on to say this, everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice. Now, that word listens, it doesn't necessarily mean just that I'm hearing what you're saying. It means that I'm actually acting or responding in obedience to what you're saying. It's almost like as a child when your parent would give you instruction and they say, do you hear me? Or that's the way my dad would say, do you hear me? What he meant was, hey, act, respond, do what I told you to do. I would always affirm, yes, sir, and then I would go do what I was instructed to do. So Jesus is saying here, everyone who is of the truth. And of course, who is that? Well, John 14, I am the way, the truth. So basically, Jesus is saying, everyone who is of me listens to my voice. They respond obediently to my voice. Interestingly, this is not the first time that Jesus used this same mode of argument. No, in fact, back in John's Gospel, chapter 10, he's dealing with the religious leaders specifically there, and he says this, my sheep hear my voice. Different term there. I know them, and they follow me. I give them eternal life, and they will never perish. No one will snatch them out of my hand. I love how this really corresponds closely with the fact that Jesus as king has all authority and all power. He is the dominant ruler. And I don't mean that in a domineering sense, but I'm talking about he's dominant, meaning all powerful. So in this case, he says, those who hear me know my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. They obey me. They surrender my lordship. And so in that sense, they become his. He owns them. And like he says here, no one can take them out of my hand. So we come back to John chapter 18 then, and we see that Jesus has explained his purpose for being. Yes, he's a king, but he's a king with a different mission, a mission of revelation, a mission of salvation, of course, we know, a mission of deliverance. But Pilate doesn't catch it. All he does is kind of fall into the mantra of philosophers and those who would argue the point and saying, well, what is truth, says Pilate. Now, there are some who say that he wasn't being skeptical here, he wasn't being cynical here, he was just kind of responding. He might have said, what is truth? But, the way he goes about it, I think he's just more frustrated. He's like, oh my goodness, I'm sitting here trying to figure this out, and you're throwing out some philosophical argument here. Well, what is truth after all? Well, Jesus is. He was halfway there. He was looking for truth. He should have said, who is truth? Because truth was right there standing before him. And that truth still rules and reigns today because that's our Jesus. And because he is truth, we must listen to him. And that's what he says right there. For those who hear me, those who listen to my voice are of me, and they obey me. I think about another instance where Jesus says, whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he is the one who loves me. And he who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. So in this sense, we see all through this teaching that Jesus is irrefutably King of Kings and Lord of Lords forever. And he's shown us that in Revelation by his power over creation, his power over death. He has shown us that he is the conquering king. He's shown us that he is the gracious king, and that he didn't bring the judgment that we deserved. Instead, he brought grace. And he continues to extend that grace to all who would believe by faith. And so as we celebrate the birth of Jesus, we keep on celebrating the birth of Jesus, even though we're right on the cusp, we're right at the doorstep of a brand new year. We celebrate the fact that in the Christ, in Jesus, God has revealed himself. In Jesus, God has completed his plan of redemption. And in Jesus, God will one day, by his determined timeline, send Jesus back to reestablish intimate fellowship with his prized creation. That's us, the Imago Dei, the image bearers, man. And that, my friends, is more than enough reason to celebrate. Speaking of celebration, Sunday's coming. But I pray that every day for you is a day of personal worship. You're filling that cup so that when you get here on Sunday, you will come with a cup that's overflowing. You will come with a sense of anticipation and excitement of the celebration of who Jesus is. You'll come not focused on what this does for you and what this means for you and how all this can center on you. Instead, you'll come excited about how this can be a time where we join our voices together in lifting praises up to Jesus. So until we're together again, my friends, I love you as your pastor, and I always encourage you, as I always will, live sent.